Cool. We are gathered here today after some technical difficulties, which none of you will have seen in the replay. It's all perfect. To talk about The Witches, a classic 1990 movie based on a book by Roald Dahl. I thought we could start with our usual. We can skip. Jeremy's going to run slides today as we've been sorting out our difficulties, but we can skip a few of these and maybe cut to the ones we need to. But I think we've started before with just a quick introduction about who you are, if you haven't seen our streams before, but also what is your relationship to the movie The Witches. So maybe we'll start with Sarah.
Well, I'm Sarah. I'm a teacher, and I have seen The Witches maybe this was my second or third time. I feel like maybe it was like the third time I watched it. So this is a movie that Kyle introduced me to because it was one of his, I don't know if childhood favorites or something like that. He's like a huge Roald Dahl fan, but I'll let him talk about that. It's hard when you're married to somebody, you just start telling their stories. But my biggest memory associated with it actually is one time we had a sleepover with one of our neighbor's kids. We were watching him while his parents were out of town, and we thought it would be like a cute, fun movie for all the kids to watch, and it completely damaged him. And he was like up all night and then went home all traumatized to his mom, talking about how scary it was and how he couldn't believe like we let him watch it, and we felt really bad.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it is a kids movie.
I guess, yeah.
Our kids were younger than him, by the way. He's 2 years older than our oldest, and we let all three of our boys watch it, and they were all fine. So you never know what's going to scare somebody, though. Like,
yeah.
So,
cool. How about Jackie? What was your take?
I'm Jackie, and I've never seen Witches, but I am a big Roald Dahl fan, and I've taught many of his short stories. My favorite's Lamb to the Slaughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved is Roald Dahl the Peach movie, James and the Giant Peach? Yeah. I loved that as a kid a lot. So, yeah, that's it for me.
Cool. Jeremy.
Hi, guys. I'm Jeremy. I'm Jackie's husband. I did not encounter The Witches as a movie until we watched it for this live stream. But I read this in my 5th grade class with Ms. Boydson. Shout out to Ms. Boydson from the Canyon Theater Guild. She read the book really dramatically and was kind of formative for me, like as an English teacher. That was like the moment where I was like, oh, like books can be like really exciting and really fun, and like a good teacher can make them that way. I didn't know the movie existed. Which is surprising considering I think, everything that it has going for it. And so, yeah. And so this is Agatha. Agatha and I have been trying to do an experiment on Twitch where if you don't know, Kyle knows. Kyle watches Agatha all along. So Agatha's a witch, and she's played by Catherine Hahn in this Marvel series. But Agatha from the comics is portrayed as like this old woman. And so Agatha and I are trying to play. So in this Marvel game you can play for free, she takes control of the game. So Agatha and I started Twitch streaming. Yeah, it sucks. And so I'll get her opinion every now and then on the witches. Very problematic.
I mean, I don't even know if can we even proceed after that? I don't know.
That was the highlight. That's the clip.
So she won't be there the whole time. Don't worry.
Incredible. Also, shout out to your Popeye shirt referencing that.
Oh yeah. Podcast. The coolest guy I know got it for my birthday.
Nice.
And I had to. So Jackie and I were walking around the new Trader Joe's, and I was just like, gonna talk about Popeye. Oh wait a minute, no we're not. Like I was ready to go round 2 on Robin Williams' Popeye.
Yeah, who isn't? Yeah, oh, cool. New Trader. We'll have to check out the new Trader Joe's sidebar. Yeah, I also as a huge Roald Dahl fan, which nowadays can be a little bit problematic, which we'll talk about. But growing up, and The Witches were great. I also love The Twits, which is another great book of his that apparently they were gonna make a movie, and they're still make a Netflix movie, which is also really dark and weird. And I hope they eventually make it. But like all of his stuff is way darker and weirder than the movies. But this one I think was one of the ones that came closest to it, with the exception of one part, which we'll talk about. And then also there was a remake, which we can talk a little bit about, just a few years ago, 4 years ago, I think. But yeah, Jeremy, do you want to like put up the maybe the fun facts slide? I've got some pretty interesting fun facts, some of which we separated out into the after the review part. But yeah, if you skip over to we met us, vibe check, talk about how we feel in a second. But yeah, so fun facts like we've been doing in the past ones. So this was made by a British director named Nicholas Roeg, who I was not familiar with, but apparently he did The Man Who Fell to Earth with David Bowie, so he has some kind of, weird street cred going for him. He was known for his idiosyncratic visual and narrative style, characterized by the use of disjointed and disoriented editing. I, for one, noticed a lot of like intense zooms, a lot of them in this movie that he loves to do. But for his kind of disjointed vibe, he's considered a highly influential filmmaker. He's cited as an inspiration by directors such as Steven Soderbergh, Christopher Nolan, and Danny Boyle, which is interesting. And this is also, this started off like a wave of deaths, this movie. So you saw Jim Henson, obviously the Henson Company was involved in doing a lot of the effects and puppetry style stuff in here. This was Jim Henson's last movie he worked on before he died. It was also the last film made before Roald Dahl himself died of his material. And also the Swedish actress who played the Grandma Helga, this was her last role in an English language film before she died as well. So quite a few things. During the shoot, Rowan Atkinson, aka Mr. Bean, you may have recognized as the hotel manager, caused a Mr. Bean style calamity when he left the bath taps running in his room. And the porters were knocking on the door frantically, and he said, "Go away, I'm asleep." And it flooded and wrote off much of the electrical equipment on the floor below. So, classic Mr. Bean, which is great. Some of the actresses also considered for the role of the Grand High Witch that Angelica Houston played were Helen Mirren, Sigourney Weaver, Linda Blair from The Exorcist, Jodie Foster, Liza Minnelli, and Cher. The latter of which would be incredible, Cher as the witch as well, but Angelica Houston was awesome. And then it took Angelica Houston 6 hours to apply the Grand High Witch makeup and another 6 hours to remove it. The prosthetics included a full face mask, a hump, mechanized claws, and a withered collarbone. She described a scene where she was so uncomfortable and tired of being encased in rubber under hot lights for hours that the lines ceased to make sense and all she wanted to do was cry, which sounds on point. And then as I mentioned, this was remade in 2020 with Anne Hathaway as the Grand High Witch and directed by Robert Zemeckis, legendary director. We'll talk about how that was received a little bit later. And then finally, I did notice this briefly, but I couldn't really confirm it, but a lot of the extras in the Grand High Witch ballroom scene were actually bald men to help lessen the intricate witch prosthetics needed and apply all that stuff. So a lot of dudes in there among the witches. Do you want to skip to the next slide? I know Sarah's got some thoughts too on this, but yeah. So I wanted to talk about, before we jump into our take on this, Real Talk in the Writing Hut. So if you're not familiar or have been obsessed with Roald Dahl, so he had what he called the Writing Hut, which was this little cottage type thing in the back of his property where he would go to his, I don't know if he was escaping his family or whatever, but he had this like sick little, now it looks kind of disgusting, but kind of interesting chair. He would just sit in with this little board and he would sit there and write all there. So I can share maybe some links in the replay about the hut. I'm a big fan of it. Would love to have a writing hut in my life. So sick writing hut, credit where credit's due on that. But on the flip side, also a huge anti-Semite. So even just a few quotes and to show you what I'm talking about. He did an interview, I think this was the early 80s. I'll share the links, but he's done multiple interviews where he's just really doubled down on anti-Semitism over the years, including one where he said, even a stinker like Hitler didn't pick on them for no reason. He also then the interviewer said he wondered if Mr. Dahl was ill or in the early stages of some kind of emotional or mental disorder, but he subsequently refused to withdraw anything he'd said, even though he was given many opportunities. Years later, he gave another interview to another reporter in which he said straight up, "I'm certainly anti-Israel and I've become anti-Semitic." So pretty clear cut. And the Dahl family and the company that makes his new movies, a lot of them on Netflix recently, called the Roald Dahl Story Company, had to actually deeply apologize to the world and the fan base for the lasting and understandable hurt caused by some of his statements. He says, "Those prejudiced remarks are incomprehensible to us and stand in marked contrast to the man we knew and the values at the heart of Roald Dahl's stories, which have positively affected young people for generations." So not great recently. I know, Sarah, if you want, you can probably stop sharing for now, Jeremy. I don't think Sarah had some thoughts too. We can maybe get into this as we talk about it, about his role, his treatment of women too, which also came up in some of this research.
Well, I'm interested to see what the research says. I want to distinguish the movie from the story, because I actually feel like the movie did a really good job. Like, I don't feel like the movie was this misogynistic reading of the text, but I feel like the text itself, like what's actually written, which like what makes a woman a witch, is just sheer like women who are not following the rules of femininity. Like, they're not wearing the pretty shoes because their feet don't fit into the, like, they can't wear pretty shoes, they have to wear sensible shoes. And like the whole thing with like putting on their faces, to me, was just like makeup. And then like they're bald and they have gross hands. Like, it's just women who don't like conform to beauty standards are basically like witches, which I thought was really like hateful to women. And also like there were just weird scenes where I thought it was just conflating adult womanhood with witchery, like being a witch. But I don't think the movie really did that. It's more the story. So that's why I think like, I was like, I think Roald Dahl hates women, or at least grown up women. Maybe he likes like children, like little girls.
Unless they're Jewish, apparently.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think he likes grown-up women.
I mean, I guess the counterpoint to that would be Grandma Helga, is that her name? In the movie, because I actually, one of my notes was like, it's really cool seeing like a grandma be the hero of this story. And like, she's the one like taking the risks and having the big hero moments. And like, you don't see that very often in film.
But
And
she's an older woman. She's in The Crone. It's like women.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's like,
yes,
I think he's okay with the children and maybe like the old, but there's something threatening to him about a woman in her prime.
Yeah.
That's just my.
Yeah. The woman at the end who saves them.
We can also.
She's conforming to all the beauty standards.
Yeah. We can also
blonde witch.
We can also talk about. We can talk about how Roald Dahl felt about that too. That's a whole separate conversation at the end.
I was gonna say, but I feel like that's different because maybe that wasn't part of his story.
We'll get to that. That's a big part. Okay, so let's jump into our little chat about the movie, the RSPCC meeting, if you will. So we'll start at the beginning. 8-year-old Luke is vacationing in Norway with his grandmother Helga, who warns him about witches who hate children and use various methods to destroy them. Helga describes how to identify witches, including their physical traits like claws, bald heads, purple-tinged eyes, and feet, square feet, I guess, or rectangular feet, no toes. After Luke's parents die in a car accident, Helga becomes his guardian. So, thoughts on the opening scenes here? I have a few. Maybe Jeremy, you want to start?
I just really felt like this movie had a really unique tone. In that it wasn't quite funny, it wasn't quite scary. It was a really good kids movie, I think, from jump. And I think that while watching it, I sort of was watching it as a kid and not really analyzing the meaning behind it. And I agree with what Sarah said earlier. Like, I think a lot of this movie is going to be kind of gross when you start to dive into it, you know, because it's like, if it's anti-women tropes, anti-Jewish tropes, like, then this is a really gross movie, especially because I didn't pick up on it. And that makes it kind of subversive. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, Kyle, on the opening of the movie specifically.
Yeah, I thought right out of the gate with the kids movie, just showing a severed finger with the grandmother, I was like, yeah, right out of the and then I also I wanted to see a prequel about the grandma as a young woman hunting witches. That would be a sick movie. And then also I was like, I see how it is. Bald is evil. You know,
I was like, hey.
Yeah, come on. And then also the fact that she was just yellowing cigars left and right, also incredible. So like she is.
Yes, I love the cigars.
Yeah, just like you don't see that often. I mean, you see like dudes, but not like an old lady just chowing down. I'd mentioned in the opening, the director loves zooming in. There were so many like witch in the window, but like throughout the movie, that's the case. Even at the seaside resort, and then also like in addition to missing finger. And the killing of the parents within the first few minutes. Also, imprisoning someone in a painting until they grow old and die in the painting is a pretty hard way to take someone out. So I was like, right off the bat, like the witches are threatening, I think. So,
but the painting, yeah.
But yeah, it never was like revisited at the end of the movie.
No, yeah.
I really thought it was interesting how the boy, like, very kind of quickly was going to his parents' side. Like, he seemed to like move on very quickly, and hear about like the resilience of him and like of children. But like, yeah, I was like, oh, your parents just died. But
he's like, what?
And then also like kind of what Sarah was saying, I was very conflicted about the portrayal of the witches, because part of me liked, like, I really liked the line that said, what makes her dangerous is the fact that she doesn't look dangerous. And he mentioned like they hide in their plainness. And part of me really liked that these like, because I think people view like plain women as unassuming, like not powerful creatures, but like maybe they are. Yeah, I was conflicted by that because I really liked that idea, but then I was kind of conflicted on like the follow through of that.
But it's interesting though, because like we haven't met the character yet, but that's so not the Grand High Witch. But is that what makes a woman powerful to other women? Is that they're dazzling and they're like, you know, have jewelry and makeup and they're beautiful, and so maybe
that's
even
that.
It
was kind of like subverting what makes a woman powerful. And how you, like, as a woman who is viewed as plain, only able to be powerful in like a deceptive way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think, Sarah?
I think you guys covered everything I wanted to say. I love the cigar. I love Grandma's whole life. I loved her sweaters. A lot of great knitwear in this movie. Sweaters looked really like nice and expensive and textured and layered. And man, I love these sweaters. And the painting thing was terrifying. I always find that terrifying. I don't know if like I saw like a really creepy Alfred Hitchcock hour when I was a kid where this little girl turned into a doll, and that always terrified me. I think this kind of played on that idea of becoming and being trapped in a thing or becoming a thing, like being in a painting is like there's something about that that's so elementally terrifying that I really liked that.
Yeah, just that concept of being trapped in a 2D space, and the fact that like, you know, oh, the girl will be here or she'd be there, so that girl's whole universe is just that house and that yard. And then, you know, Angelica Houston, when she enters the hotel, she taps a girl in a painting, and it's like, you motherfucker, you've done it again. So like Jackie said, I was waiting for the moment when someone would be put into a painting, or the character be put in the painting and then get out somehow. But it's the most interesting, terrifying concept. And once you're 20 minutes in, it's never mentioned again.
Never talked again. Yeah.
And I'm like, weird choice.
Yeah.
I can't remember if that's part of the book too. I assume it was in the book.
It is. I remember it being, yeah. I forget if they come. I don't think I think it's just a permanent thing too in the book, is from what I remember. Okay, so moving on. Luke's birthday, Helga falls ill with, I think, temporary diabetes or something. They said it was a little. She just goes to the ocean. And they're like, it's all good now.
Yeah.
They travel to a seaside hotel to recuperate. At the hotel, Luke befriends Bruno Jenkins, a gluttonous boy, and inadvertently antagonizes the hotel manager, Mr. Stringer. Unbeknownst to them, the hotel is hosting a convention. Of yes, the hotel's hosting a convention of witches disguised as the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, RSPCC. Okay, thoughts, Sarah? You've got some thoughts.
I'm going to throw it to Jackie first because I know she's going to say what I'm thinking. Another thing that Roald Dahl hates is
fat people.
Big time, yeah.
That was like his defining characteristic was literally just being obsessed with food to the point where he had no other personality at all. Like it was extremely fat phobic and very much like the trope of the funny fat friend that's just there being fat and like a sidekick, but like.
And every line of his was just about food. He didn't have any other lines. He was just like, "These cream cakes are delicious."
Yeah, that was so like closed-minded, very, very like, rigid thinking about fat people, which is, it's sad because it's like, I feel like I don't know if I'm giving the movie more credit than it deserves with like, I feel like it does have more of a nuanced sort of like message. Like I thought it was interesting. The Grand High Witch was like, she kind of spoke like Hitler, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like she kind of spoke like Hitler and like this, you don't really see women in like dictator oppressive roles like that. And I thought that was interesting, and I thought it was interesting to see a woman like just like who is a monster and who is a dictator without like a reason, like just purely like
she just has ambition like a man.
Yes, Sarah, yes. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting, but I think what I'm conflicted about is like the message isn't like pro-women at all. I just think it's interesting that a woman was depicted in that light. But I agree that like I think Roald Dahl like maybe had negative experiences with women and like portrayed them in this light, not in a negative way towards women, but I also thought it was a unique way.
Yeah, you don't see it often, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting though, because like so it's a lot to unpack here. I identify as a Bruno Jenkins. I freaking loved Bruno. I think yes, I did. I loved him in all his forms.
Know he was a mouse, Jeremy. He was like, "I'm not a mouse."
That's so funny. That's so funny. That's so funny.
I guess that's the other character trait. He was dumb. So he was fat, but he was also really dumb. And that's, if you're fat, you have to be dumb.
Yeah, I mean, Augustus Gloop. It's like Willy Wonka. Augustus Gloop is too dumb. He falls in the chocolate river because he's too fat.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
I really liked Bruno. I understood his obsession with the pastries.
I mean,
I don't know,
but I'm just saying.
I know that's
smart to be a Bruno. That's all.
I just don't think being a Bruno is such a bad thing. Like he's a ride or die with Luke there. He goes on the whole journey, you know. But like, I don't know. I think that is. It also reminds me of the Grand High Witch, though, because like, I mean, also great. Is there a greater name than Grand High Witch? Like that just bounces off the tongue. It's so good. But like, you know, she's this really powerful, really cool character, and it's kind of problematic, but you still really love to watch her. Bruno is this really entertaining fat trope, but you kind of love him and you kind of like to watch it, you know. So that kind of just goes back to this thing where like I just didn't analyze like kids movies, and I think my brain turned off a little bit while watching this intentionally. So
yeah, I'll kick it to Sarah because I think you have thoughts on the dad too, your favorite character. But my only notes on this scene were I was really in awe of Luke's jeans. They were totally thick.
DoorDash, like
yeah, and I think I heard Velcro at some point involved in them. That was like super awesome. And then also I love her Angelica's entrance with like, you may remove your shoes, you may remove whatever. So I thought that was like super iconic. But I don't know, Sarah, what your thoughts are on Bruno.
Okay, I have a couple things I love. I did love Bruno's dad. I love when he's like, what are we paying for? Like the line. Couldn't think they could have had 2 tea trays or whatever. Like, I don't know. He was just such an obnoxious character. And I do feel like Roald Dahl's good at calling out obnoxious adults and like materialism. So there are some things that I think Roald Dahl excels at, like parodying and calling out. I also loved the eager beaver witch in the scenes who's like so excited and like she gets out her notepad at one point. You know the one I'm talking about? And then she's like, in every scene, and like when the one witch is burning and she's just like, she's like so excited to watch her friend, supposedly colleague, like burn to death. Like, I think she was just such a hilarious character.
We all know that person in like the staff meeting at work, like you know, the person who's taking the diligent notes and is way too into the PD. Yes.
Cool. Okay, so moving on, Luke discovers the witches' meeting by hiding behind that little barrier thing in the conference room, and overhears their plan. The Grand High Witch, calling herself Eva Ernst for when she's in disguise, reveals a magic potion that turns children into mice. Bruno, who has been given the potion earlier, is transformed into a mouse as a live demonstration. Luke is caught spying and is forced to drink the potion, turning him into a mouse as well. Any thoughts on the transformation scene in that whole?
I just loved how down like Luke was to be a mouse.
Oh yeah, he was super into it.
He was just so into it, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm fine with the drama. Like it's not." And I was just like, "Okay, cool, Luke." Like something really like Luke is so like resilient and like optimistic, and like that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I was kind of mad at Luke and Grandma at first because, like, I kind of felt bad for Mr. Bean. Of course, he doesn't want mice in his hotel.
Yeah.
And they just totally ignore him. She's like, oh, yeah, he'll keep him in the cage. And then he just immediately takes one loose in his hand down to the ballroom and starts. I was like mad. And I was kind of mad at the grandma for just letting him. But then I was like, as I was thinking about it, I was like, is this like about my conflict about like what society expects of mothers? Like maybe I should be applauding grandma for just being like, I don't think it's that big a deal. Go play. Like, go play with your mice. Like, whereas I feel like I would have felt like such a people pleaser and like, oh, we can't be the ones who like ruin this fancy hotel. So I think like after 24 hours of thinking about it, I think I like Grandma and Luke just like saying screw it. But like my first read was like, oh, that's so horrible to Mr. Bean, and they're so rude and disrespectful. Oh, and he had like food down there. He's like training with food. He's like getting food all over the ground. I was like,
yeah, she was like dying. There's like crumbs everywhere. You could see Sarah dying. Yeah.
I was mad.
I just think you have empathy for the service industry, Sarah. And you know, like, and you imagine being one of the other customers and being like, that's selfish. Like,
or just being the hotel manager whose job it is to make sure that the hotel isn't infested with rats. So
what was with the subplot of Mr. Bean getting some on the side?
Yeah, that was no, for no reason.
Either. And we never noticed it before. This was like the first time we noticed it, and we were like, and Kyle goes, did you just have sex with her in that hotel room?
No, he totally did. He's like, I've been with her all afternoon. Just keep going.
He probably wrote that in as part of his contract. He's like, I got to break my Bean image. Yeah.
But it's like another thing though, where it's
Bean?
Like, yeah.
What's that?
Was he already Mr. Bean at this point?
I think so. I feel like Mr. Bean's been around forever. I don't know.
He's too young to me.
It may be. I don't know.
Another weird thing, though.
Is this the part where like we actually see her transform into the witch?
Yeah.
That was like really amazing. Like, just
it's still home. Yeah.
Yelled out. Didn't I like kind of scream?
Oh yeah. Yes, absolutely.
I think that's
it's one of Jackie's. Oh.
That's like such a memorable scene.
Yeah, it holds up too. Like it's still horrifying looking. Like,
yeah, the kid we gave nightmares to. It absolutely stuck in his mind. It was that, and then at the end when she's the rat. That both of those like.
Oh, that's yeah. I put. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say it kind of made me realize that like when you do something with practical effects, like that movie is timeless in a way that other special effects never will be, you know, because like cutting edge CG from the early 2000s, it looks like a bad video game now.
Yeah.
And one day these movies we have now that we think are so incredible our filter will just see it as super fake.
Yeah.
But when you use real puppets and real costumes, like, you know, and was there anything cuter on the planet than the mice puppets, the Jim Henson mice puppets for Bruno and Luke, the way that they would talk? And
Sarah has thoughts on those.
Sarah, what?
A couple of the shots, they looked really bad, like really scruffy and gross. But then it's like, then in other shots, they were like combed and nice. I was like, I don't understand how these scruffy ones made it into the film.
I did not notice them looking bad. I don't know what she's talking about, but yeah.
I have a question. If in your research, does Roald Dahl have some sort of like toxic relationship with his mom?
It's a good question. I did not come across that, but yeah, it's a good question.
I just thought it was really interesting how like Angelica Houston was almost aroused by her like.
That was my note too. She's like borderline orgasming as the potions take effect.
Yeah. And she was like trembling and like almost touching herself, and like
she kept like.
And it's like, what is this? What happened to, I don't know. There's just something about how like she's aroused by punishing children, and like why the person who created this story kind of like what inspired that is just what I was wondering.
Yeah. He has a lot of characters that are aroused by punishing children.
I mean, the whole of Willy Wonka is also like, let's punish 5 different children in different ways. Do you know what I mean? Like when
I was thinking of even like Matilda, the Choki, and
or James the Giant Peach.
Yeah, with horrible ants. Yeah. There's definitely got to be something going on there for sure.
There's some demons in his closet.
I put to.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Okay,
I just like really. This is probably an obvious sort of like observation, but I just liked how intense the transformations were from like woman to witch, and it just made me think of like how I think women are expected to transform in order to be palatable to like society. And I thought it conveyed that well, and how like if you don't do that, you literally are a monster, kind of, especially if
and the discomfort women go through to look just presentable to the world, like they're all itching their heads and their feet, and I agree. I definitely saw that, which is why I kind of was like, does he like hate womanhood or like
femininity
the practice of womanhood? Like, I don't know.
I just want to shout out Jackie for laughing. So during the mice transformation, every person who becomes a mice does a big old belch at one point, and it made Jackie laugh every time. Every time. And she's I was like, yes. That's why our marriage works.
Yeah. How like Bruno's transformation was like super elaborate, and he's like shaking and freaking out, and then Luke's was like, he drinks the potion. Oh no! Cut to a pile of clothes. Like they ran out of money.
I mean, they're gonna have 2 elaborate puppet transformation sequences. I actually liked that. And it was horrifying. I was like, I don't want to see this again.
Yeah. I also love too that the giant gathering that they all. I don't know if they flew in from all of England or the world, but they all came to this hotel, and it was literally just, you are all terrible. Time to turn some kids into mice. Come to my room later to get some potions, and we're out. Like the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, why did
Not
you
gonna
get some
get
cash?
from, like candy
Yeah.
stores.
Like, I love that it was a giant convention for like, could have been an email. It's like amazing. It was pretty great.
So true.
Cool. Anyone else on this one, or we can move on to the next? Okay, so next part. Now a mouse, Luke reunites with Bruno and returns to Helga, convincing her of his identity. Together, they devise a plan to defeat the witches. Luke sneaks into the Grand High Witch's room to steal the potion, then infiltrates the kitchen to add it to the soup prepared for the RSPCC dinner. At the dinner, the witches consume the soup laced with their own potion. Chaos ensues as they begin transforming into mice. The hotel staff and guests, unaware of the witch's true nature, inadvertently help eliminate them by killing the mice. Helga traps the transformed Grand High Witch, leading to her demise at the hands of Mr. Stringer. All right, thoughts on the whole potion soup, everything scene?
I just thought it was really neat the way that, you know, you turn your characters into mice, and now this hotel is like an adventure, and it was very like Temple of Doom. The kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
there were fire and smashers, and you know, it's kind of, you know, reminded me of Ratatouille, but like, you know,
Yeah.
I think Ratatouille owes something to this movie. Did we all just really want to try cress soup though? That looked good.
Yeah, what is
Celery
cress?
cream.
I don't even know what that is. Yeah.
It's a celery cream soup.
Okay.
Sounds delicious.
The other one was kakaliki.
Yeah, oh yeah, I don't want kakaliki.
I don't want kakaliki, I want cress.
Which would be chicken and leek, right?
I guess. Yeah. I don't know.
Yes.
I would assume.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, babe.
Oh, I was just gonna ask if anyone else. So I feel like this is kind of a stoner movie because of all like the visuals and like it's very kind of laid back at times. And the fast food bag that Bruno is hiding in at one point. No, I think he's just eating it actually, to the point where Bruno is just laying in a fast food bag with like fries in his mouth. But I'm almost certain it was Tommy Chong's was the name of the fast food joint on the bag. Yeah. So I got a chuckle out of that. Tommy Chung, he's a Cheech and Chong.
Oh, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But he has a fast food place?
No, I think it was a joke. I think they made the bag for this movie, you know, as a little Easter egg, a little shout out to those humors. Yeah, I hope I'm not way off, but I really thought I saw that.
Yeah. Sarah, what's your take?
This might be going back a little bit. Those old school baby carriages.
Oh
Don't
yeah.
put your baby in one because it's gonna be bad. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Didn't that happen to the?
That's gonna happen to the.
Isn't that how the?
Nobody has ever featured one of those baby carriages in like a positive way? Never.
Isn't that how the
Never happened.
penguin
Don't put
in
your
Batman
kid on.
Returns? The penguin got
Oh,
on a runaway carriage. Yeah.
Peter
It always-
Pan. Isn't that how he went to Neverland?
Yeah, that's how it always happens. In that
Baby
game.
carriage.
yeah.
That was a
Untouchables,
terrifying scene, though.
iconic scene at the end of Untouchables with the baby carriage on the stairs. You just don't want to use those.
No.
Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Oh, as in Ghostbusters 2 too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really loved this scene where they were asking the Grand High Witch. Bruno's dad was chatting her up, and the wife was like all mad. That was weird too. The wife, he was like chatting her up, and the wife was like, "I got you a drink," and
Yeah.
he was just chatting up the witch. But he was asking her about their charity or whatever for the children, and she couldn't even talk about it without a barf bowl, which I thought was hilarious. She was like, "Yes, we give money to the," and the blonde one was there with the barf bowl. I just thought that was hilarious.
Jackie, any thoughts on this part?
I don't really have any like takes, but is this part of the scene where like the rat stepped on?
Yes. Yeah.
So,
The
that
first
was,
witch gets turned.
Well, one of the scenes where like the rat stepped on the mice, it was really powerful and like kind of like gory for a kids movie.
Yeah.
The ending of the movie is incredibly gory. And so what the scene Jack is referring to is that one of the witches tastes the soup first, turns into a rat or a mouse, I guess,
Oh, yeah.
and tries to run up to enjoy it, to warn Angelica Houston, and she just stomps on its head, and it bursts into green blood, and it's like, holy crap, she got it. And then the climax of the movie being that all of them are turned into witches or mice, and then the hotel staff just runs in with clubs and cleavers and just
okay on it.
Who kills mice that way?
Well, the Grand High Witch Mouse like takes like a cleaver to the face, and then like there's a scene where like Rowan Atkinson is like walking up with a blood-covered kitchen knife, and it's like, wow.
It's a mess around. I put in this part to because we see it again where he reunites with that maid. I just put Mr. Bean casually nailing that maid for no reason.
Oh, yeah.
And then I thought that when the kid mouse breaks into the Grand High Witch's room, that her like human mask in the box was like a real Return to Oz callback. Where he saw that sitting there, which was freaking me out. I just put does Roald Dahl just hate kids generally? Also parents, maybe just all people. So something along those lines we talked about. And then I don't know if you guys are Downton Abbey fans, but we for the first time noticed that Mr. Carson from Downton Abbey was the chef, and he was crushing it as always. And also when they had to take his pants off to look for the mouse that ran up there, I was really thankful we didn't have to see his balls. So.
Is that a thing you see in Downton Abbey?
No, but I was just thankful that didn't happen.
Okay. You thought there was going to be full-on ball shot in his kids' movie?
I mean, anything goes with this. So
I think there was at the end.
Right. That's right. There was like a straight up when the kid transformed back to a kid. I think there's like, did I see his ball? I think
fully nude.
I think you did for like if you were really deranged and paused it. I think you do. So
there was but so that whole sequence of the mouse climbing up the chef's leg is legit hilarious because he's still whisking, and then Rowan Atkinson runs up to help, and he hands him the bowl, and he keeps whisking.
I noticed that. I was like, "What is that recipe that has to be whisked?" Like that must have been really intense dessert or something.
But dedication to their craft, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the whisk must go on, and then so they pull his pants off, and Rowan Atkinson goes, "Nothing much in there."
Yeah, all right.
I noticed that joke too.
I thought that was really funny, and then also we totally glossed over the cat attack. There's a very intense scene where Luke is trying to sneak into the witch's room to get the poison to turn them all into mice, and her cat Liebchen attacks, and it's like it reminded me of like Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
with the cat climbing the tree at the mouse as the mouse is begging grandma for help over and over again, and like it was scary. So I thought that was really effective.
All right, so final segment. With the witches defeated, Luke and Helga return home. They discover the Grand High Witch's trunk containing money and an address book of all witches in the United States, allowing them to plan further operations against witches worldwide. In the film's conclusion, Miss Irvine, apparently that's her name, the Grand High Witch former assistant turned good witch, visits Luke and Helga. She uses her magic to transform Luke back into a human, along with his pet mice. The story ends with Miss Irvine departing to help Bruno, while Luke and Helga wave goodbye, ready to continue their fight against witches. So there are some thoughts we'll talk about in a second about that ending, but what is everyone else's take on how it ended?
Did you say that she turns the mice, his pet mice, into humans?
No, I think she returns them to him.
Oh, okay, got him.
Any thoughts, Jackie, initially?
I just thought it was funny how at the end he was like, "Don't forget about Bruno," and then like that was like all there was about
right.
Bruno. Like
gotta wrap this up.
Yeah.
Plus white. It was kind of interesting how she was like this glowing white dress blonde woman that comes and like very beautiful that comes and just saves them all. I don't know. There was something off-putting about that.
I agree. I did not like the end at all. Like I thought it kind of ruined the rest of the movie in a lot of ways, just because it didn't make any sense. We've established the whole premise of the movie was established at the beginning. There's these witches. They're horrible. There's no mention in the grandma's like explanation of good witches.
Yeah.
So we've been set up from the beginning to think there aren't good witches. And it's like, oh, except if they're blonde and pretty, then I guess they are good. Like, I don't know. I just hated that. I hated it.
Me too.
Yeah. I did think it was an interesting fake out though, because like when she's turning him back, the music is sinister. She's cackling like a bad witch. And then he bursts naked out of the Ghostbuster firehouse toy that I had as a kid. That was a very, it's like, hey, I had that toy. Oh my God. Like exploding into a naked 10-year-old.
That was weird.
Quite the journey. I don't know if you needed the full shot. I think what you guys are referring to is you see the shape of genitalia. I don't think you actually see detail. But still, it's like, why?
It was really fast, but I was like, whoa, I feel like I just, like, he was fully naked.
No, don't Google it. Google it.
No.
This really reminds me of Matilda, though, because of, like, how there was, like, the good, pretty teacher, and then there were the, like, that big lady.
The Trunchbull.
Yes. Like, I feel like there's very simplistic, like, cartoonish notions of, like, good and evil that are, like, repeated in his stories a lot.
Definitely. I talked about this before about her hunting witches, but at the end when they're going to go hunt witches again, I wondered if they would team up with Vin Diesel, who is, of course, the last witch hunter. And do a little crossover, because I would watch that. And then also I noted, we can talk about this in a second, the kid throws in a quick mention of how long do mice live to the grandma, which comes in
dark.
We'll talk about that in a second.
Okay.
About Rold's reaction to this ending. So anyway, yeah, do we want to move on to best and worst parts? If you had to pick your favorite and your least favorite part of the movie, maybe Jackie, you want to start?
Yeah, I think my favorite part was the, like, chaotic dinner scene where they all turned into mice. I just thought, like, I'm really affected by things if I can, like, feel what's happening, and I really felt like the chaos and, like, I don't know. Yeah, that was just really powerful, and, like, I liked the sort of violence it displayed. That was my favorite part. And then maybe my least favorite part is the ending. Because I felt like I was giving the movie a lot of credit and, like, thinking about these sort of nuanced messages about women and children and all this, and then it kind of, like, fell flat at the end.
I'll jump in too, because my least favorite part was also the ending, which we'll talk about in a second. But my favorite part, I think I talked about before, was the whole Grand High Witch reveal, and that whole scene of the conference, them coming in, them kind of, like, over a period of time stripping all their different things away, and then until she finally takes her face off. Yeah, that's still cool. Sarah.
Mine are the same as yours, Kyle. Ending was the worst. The scenes in the ballroom with the witches were the best. I don't know why. I thought they had so much energy and fun, and, like, all the individual witches, and they were all so good. And I didn't know they were a bunch of bald men, but that's great. They all did such a great job of, like, they all kind of had a different energy and a different character. Like, again, my favorite was the Eager Beaver Witch, but there were several other faces that I, like, continuously, like, noticed. And I thought it's hard to do that in a big, chaotic, crowded scene, but I felt all the emotions of the crowd as, like, Angelica Houston speaking, and how the crowd had its ups and downs, and, like, I also love, like, sycophantic kind of, like, things where they're all, like, hanging on the leader, just because I think it's kind of fun. And yes, I really liked all of those scenes.
How about Jeremy?
Well, I mean, anything that involved the practical puppets. So I feel like that was just the best part. But picking a specific moment, I'll just shout out something we haven't talked about yet, which is in the epilogue of the movie when we see our hero still in mouse form, presumably a while later, because now they've retrofitted grandma's house with all these little tubes and tunnels and slides, and he's riding his little car around in, like, this kind of, Sarah and I were talking last night about how fun marble tracks are, and, like, this was the ultimate marble track, excuse me. I loved just that they on. Yeah, and it's like he's just really made the best of this. And, you know, I mean, not to drop the mood or anything, but, like, a lot of my students have been through some really horrific stuff, and, like, I think the resiliency of a young child is something that is well portrayed in this. I don't think it's a mistake that he just bounces back from his parents dying and he bounces back from being a mouse and like, you know, he's like, it's not all bad. I got a tail. This is pretty cool. It's like, yeah, Luke. And also the child actor. I thought he was real cute. And another good movie with a child actor, Return to Oz, was like a surprise in that regard. And this one is too. I usually hate child actors. I get sick of them. Did not with this kid. And just the worst would be, you know, honestly, looking past the veil of the movie into what motivated it and how it's affecting its viewers. I mean, I think we're gonna get to the scores in a second, but I think it loses some points for subtext, which is troubling because usually that makes a movie better. But like once you kind of see how the hot dogs are made, I don't know about the witches.
Yeah. What before we move on to the responses to the movie from critics and from Roald Dahl, what was Agatha's take on the ending for the movie?
Well, let's see here. Oh, I loved it. Oh yeah, Angelica Houston, she's a hot tomato. Now, okay, but you're just saying that because you want to be cool in your show. Yeah, she took it from me. You're gonna watch.
Okay, thank you, Agatha.
You're welcome.
So I have a few quotes and then the Roald Dahl controversy, which is exciting. Okay, so right now on Rotten Tomatoes, currently it sits at 94% a positive review, which is pretty good. The critical consensus reads, with a deliciously wicked performance from Angelica Houston, imaginative puppetry from Jim Henson's Creature Shop, Nicholas Roeg's dark and witty movie captures the spirit of Roald Dahl's writing like few other adaptations. Roger Ebert at the time gave it 3 out of 4 stars, calling it an intriguing movie, ambitious and inventive, and almost worth seeing just for Angelica Houston's obvious delight in playing a completely uncompromised villainess. This is from Polygon, actually. It says, in-your-face camera work and Henson's creature effects make every second of the witches unencumbered gleeful torture. Houston and her fleet of bald sorceresses, a few played by stodgy men who probably disappeared in the crowds in the pre-HD days, hold up as much as my childhood memories would hope. The half-human, half-mouse animatronics are somehow even more gruesome. How is this allowed? I'm so glad this was allowed. And then, so regarding the remake, so in 2020, the Anne Hathaway version with Anne Hathaway as the Grand High Witch came out. Most of the reviews said the film failed to capture the terror and disgust that the witches are supposed to exude. Instead, they look a lot more glamorous and pretty than they really should, given the way they're described. But the 1990 version stays a lot more faithful to the lore fed to us through the film, and it's a much more unsettling depiction. Okay, so the ending. So the book itself does not have a happy ending, as Luke remains a mouse, which reduces his living years, but he's content with this because his grandma is also elderly and is his only family, so they can both die together. They spend their days hunting witches from other countries using information from the Grand High Witch. Luke is satisfied and makes the best of the situation. So Roald Dahl, when he saw the movie, Dahl was incensed that Henson had changed. He said Henson, probably the filmmakers, had changed his original ending in the script. As a gesture of conciliation, Henson offered to film 2 versions before he made his final choice: the book version where Luke remains a mouse, and the happier version where he's transformed back into a human. During the editing process, Dahl watched an early cut of the film with his original ending, and the final scene brought him to tears. However, Henson and Roeg decided to go with the happier ending, which resulted in Dahl stating he would launch a publicity campaign against the film if his name was not removed from the credits. He was only dissuaded at the urging of Jim Henson. So kind of infuriated him, which I'm on board with. I thought the book's ending is a lot kind of darker and more in keeping, but I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Sarah?
Yeah, I think Dahl's ending's way better.
Agreed.
I mean, I think they're right to cut out all the anti-Jewish stuff. That was weird. But the no, it's obviously a better ending. Like, they're cowards. Like, why would you? I guess they just didn't want the movie to be a downer. But
were they trying to make it like more palatable for children?
That's what I'm guessing. I don't know.
Kids would love the idea of being a mouse forever and being in the cool things. Like, I don't think that would have disturbed children at all. I think that was a total miss.
I agree.
Yeah, you didn't need to like make it clear that they're gonna die together. You could just, do the math. But
and he has that little line, was probably from before the other version, which was like, Grandma, how long do mice live? That they alluded to it, and then they just do the other ending. So, cool. So let's cut to the Strauss scale. Jeremy, you want to do a quick summary of the Strauss scale before we give our ratings of this movie?
Yeah. So, like I said before, it is out of 10. Anything below a 5 means you regret watching it, and then follow your heart to the number. And also, if I can go first, Kyle.
Yeah.
I'm gonna mention that I personally give bonus points. So like if a movie I think is important for people to watch, it gets a bonus point. Like if it has a message or a theme that I think is kind of valuable to society or whatever. And so this is one of the first movies I've ever watched where I think it loses a point. It's whatever the opposite of a bonus point is, a detractor, I guess. So I really loved this movie watching it. I was hovering around a 9, but after having thought about it more, thanks to your guys' conversation, I think I'm knocking it down to an 8 personally. But there's just so much about the movie that's good, the acting, the practical effects, just the really fun, kind of spooky, not scary vibes that I know Jackie loves. That if you can separate the art from the artist and not derive too much meaning from it. Basically, I think if you're an adult, this is probably okay. But if it's forming your opinion as a child, that might be messed up. But I go 8.
And how much can we when we're rating this? How much are we rating the film versus the novel?
That doesn't matter.
I think we're rating the film, right? Is that your scale?
No,
but she's saying like.
But in our rating, if we're rating it from the film, it's like, well, they aren't Roald Dahl.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, but it's still very much his creation.
But I guess it's kind of like saying like, I don't know. Like
well, I think this movie is problematic about its portrayal of women in the same way that the book is. You know what I mean? So, I guess I'm just saying, like, go with your gut. What would your number be, babe?
I think it would be an 8. The ending really brought it down. Otherwise, I thought visually and pace-wise, acting-wise, like, there was so much, like, engaging about it. But the ending and, like, the lack of, like, a sort of coherent message, I guess, at the end, or an engaging ending brought it down to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I had it as an 8 until I was chatting through it, and I kind of got angry about the ending again. So I'm giving it a 7, but around that range too. How about Sarah?
Yeah, I also thought it was a 7. I think this would be really high for me if I'd watched it as a kid. Like, I think I would have really, really liked.
Mm-hmm.
But like watching it as an adult, I found the mouse parts really boring. Like when he was just running around as a mouse, I was like, I don't care. Like, I think when I was a kid, I think those would have really hit with me. I loved Ralph S. Mouse and The Mouse and the Motorcycle. Loved those books so much. So I think I would have loved it. But just as an adult, I think I need a little bit more. I wanted more leaning into the camp and the hilarity of like the witches. I thought the witches and the like Bruno's parents were more interesting characters. Also, I thought there was a real missed opportunity with Mr. Bean and the hotel staff. They just weren't very funny. They were playing it very straight, but I thought there was a lot, like I didn't know if they were going for humor and just like not good at that type of humor. I thought that was a missed opportunity for zany moments or just to make it a little bit more interesting. But yeah, so I think more humor would have been higher for me.
Yeah, I'm curious too if you take. So what was your end rating? I forgot. Did you say 7 or something?
7.
7, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you think if you ever watch it. We won't do a full episode on it, but if you want to add in the comments if you ever watched the other one, because I thought the newer one was fine. It just is like one of those ones where you're like kind of unnecessary. Like they did update some stuff to be a little bit less problematic, I think. But overall, I think it was just kind of like, did that need to happen? Yeah. Cool. Do you want to go to the next slide? We just kind of sign off here, but I wanted to share some, this one dude I found that does some pretty sick Eva Ernst merch. If you're interested, I can share the link. But although the political campaign one needs updating, the last time he updated was 2020.
What does
but
the
yeah,
caption say on that one, that Obama looking one?
It just says Eva Ernst 2020. Yeah.
Well, 2020. That's what it says.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah, he hasn't updated it yet, but she really should be in the race this year. Do you want to share where we can find everyone else online? And you want to plug? Start with Jeremy, the usual.
Sure. So I'm Jeremy, aka JMO. I'm from the old Switcheroo. We're a retro gaming podcast. And that's where Agatha and I are trying to play Marvel Snap together. Our first recording had to be scrapped. What? Yeah, because her voice didn't get picked up by the microphone. No! So it's really sad. I actually achieved this really difficult thing, and the footage is almost useless. Aww. So yeah, but we're definitely gonna try it again because it was a lot of fun. So if you want to see me and Agatha, check out www.theoldswitcharoo.com. It has links to our Discord, and we got a couple of fun Halloween episodes coming out this year, Castlevania and Zombies Ate My Neighbors. So if you like spooky games for spooky season, check us out there. And thanks for having us, Kyle. This was really fun.
Yeah. How about Jackie?
I write poetry and post selfies on Instagram. And
what? Yeah. What's your Instagram handle? or just secret?
It's Jacqueline Francis. Is Agatha? Agatha's following me. It's JACLIN Francis with an E.
All right. How about Sarah?
I don't have anything to promote or share.
I mean, come on. Get with the times here. But what about your LinkedIn?
I'm not creative, so.
And you can find my newsletter at kylesjunkdrawer.com every Sunday. Also, Agatha, do you have an IG or anything we can hit you up?
Not yet.
Not yet? All right, keep us posted.
You've been real lazy about it.
Minutes, you will.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, I don't think we have anywhere to go. So that's perfect. We'll be back at some point with something else. Thank you all
Yay!
for coming.
Bye, guys.